The void was quiet, as it always was. A silence so vast it
We
seemed to
thought we were
stretch
alone in
forever,
the universe.
broken only by
We
the
were-
faint hum of the Vanguard's engines as it drifted through the wreckage of a dead world. Captain Elias Mercer stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes fixed on the holographic display before him. It painted a grim picture, a planet once teeming with life, now reduced to ash and ruin. Cities crumbled into dust, oceans boiled away, and the faint, lingering radiation of weapons too terrible to imagine still clung to the surface like a ghostly shroud. Elias didn't need to ask what had happened here. He'd seen it before. They all had. The crew of the Vanguard were no strangers to the aftermath of extinction. They were explorers, yes, but more often than not, they were archaeologists of the apocalypse, sifting through the remains of civilizations that had burned themselves out long before humanity had ever left Earth. And lately, there had been a pattern. "Another one," murmured Lieutenant Kara Voss, her voice barely audible over the hum of the ship. She stood beside Elias, her sharp green eyes scanning the data streaming across the display. "That's the fifth in this sector alone. Same signs, same message." Elias nodded grimly. The message. It was always the same. Scrawled on walls, etched into stone, encoded in databanks, whispered in the static of long-dead transmissions. A warning left behind by the last survivors of civilizations that had once spanned the stars. A warning about Earth. "Do you think it's true?" Kara asked, her voice tinged with unease. "What they say about us?" Elias didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned his gaze to the viewport, where the shattered remains of the planet hung against the backdrop of endless stars. He could feel the weight of her question pressing down on him, heavy and suffocating. He'd asked himself the same thing 1,000 times, and he still didn't have an answer. "Bring us into orbit," he said finally, his voice steady but hollow. "Let's see what they left behind." The Vanguard descended into the planet's upper atmosphere, its shields flaring briefly as they brushed against the remnants of the planet's magnetic field. Below, the surface stretched out like a graveyard, a desolate wasteland of crumbled buildings and scorched earth. The crew worked in silence, their movements precise and practiced. They'd done this too many times to count. As the ship settled into orbit, Elias turned to Kara. "Take a team down. See what you can find." She hesitated, her brow furrowing. "You're not coming." "I'll join you shortly," he said. "There's something I need to check first." Kara didn't press him. She simply nodded and left the bridge, her boots echoing softly against the metal floor. Elias watched her go, then turned back to the display. His fingers danced across the console, pulling up the data they'd gathered so far. It was all there. The signs of war, the traces of advanced technology, the unmistakable evidence of a civilization that had reached its peak and then collapsed under its own weight. And of course, the message. It was written in a language they didn't recognize, but the translation was clear enough. It always was. A single sentence, repeated over and over again, like a mantra or a curse. "Beware, Earth. They guard something worse." The surface was even more desolate than it had appeared from orbit. Kara and her team moved cautiously through the ruins, their suits shielding them from the lingering radiation. The air was thick with dust, and the ground crunched beneath their boots as they picked their way through the rubble. The buildings, what little remained of them, were twisted and blackened, their skeletal frames jutting out like the bones of some long-dead creature. "Over here," called one of the team members, a young engineer named Malik. He was crouched beside a collapsed structure, his scanner beeping softly. Kara approached, her eyes narrowing as she studied the readings. "What is it?" she asked. "Power source," Malik replied. "Weak, but it's still active. Could be a data core." Kara nodded. "Let's dig it out." The team worked quickly, their tools cutting through the debris with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, they'd uncovered a small cylindrical device, its surface etched with intricate patterns that glowed faintly in the dim light. Kara knelt beside it, her gloved fingers brushing against the surface. "Looks intact," she said. Let's get it back to the ship. As they prepared to leave, Kara's gaze drifted to the horizon. In the distance, she could see the remains of a massive structure, its spires reaching skyward like the fingers of a drowning man. Something about it sent a shiver down her spine. "Captain's going to want to see this," she muttered. Elias was waiting for them in the lab when they returned. The data core sat on the table, its faint glow casting eerie shadows across the walls. Malik was already working on it, his hands moving deftly as he connected it to the ship's systems. "Anything?" Elias asked. "Give me a minute," Malik replied, his eyes fixed on the screen. "This tech is strange. Advanced, but in a way that doesn't make sense. It's like they were trying to build something they didn't fully understand." Elias frowned. "Keep at it." As Malik worked, Kara told Elias about the structure she'd seen. His expression darkened as she described it, and he nodded slowly. "We'll check it out," he said. "But first, let's see what this thing has to say." A moment later, the data core came to life. The holographic display flickered, then stabilized, revealing a series of symbols and images. Malik's fingers flew across the console as he translated the data, his brow furrowing in concentration. "It's a record," he said finally. "A history of their civilization. Looks like they were at war for centuries. Different factions, different ideologies. But then something changed. They united, started working together." "What happened?" Kara asked. Malik hesitated. "They found something ancient, buried deep beneath their planet's surface. They called it the catalyst." Elias's jaw tightened. "What was it?" "I don't know," Malik admitted. "The records are fragmented. But whatever it was, it scared them. They tried to destroy it, but they couldn't. So they built that structure Kara saw, a containment facility." "And then?" Elias prompted. Malik's voice dropped to a whisper. "And then they turned their attention to Earth." The room fell silent. Elias felt a chill run down his spine as he stared at the display. The images had shifted, showing a map of the galaxy. Earth was highlighted, a single blue dot in the vast expanse of stars. Around it, symbols and warnings were scrawled in every language imaginable. "They believed Earth was connected to the catalyst," Malik said, "that we were its guardians, or its jailers." Kara shook her head. "That doesn't make any sense. How could we be connected to something that ancient? We've only just started exploring the galaxy." "I don't know," Malik said, "but they were convinced. And they weren't the only ones. The records mention other civilizations, others who found similar artifacts. They all came to the same conclusion." Elias's voice was grim. "And they all ended up like this?" The structure loomed before them, its spires casting long shadows across the barren landscape. The Vanguard's shuttle touched down a safe distance away, and Elias led the team toward the entrance. The air was heavy with an oppressive stillness, as if the planet itself were holding its breath. The entrance was sealed, but Malik quickly bypassed the lock, and the massive doors groaned open. Inside, the air was cool and dry, and the walls were lined with strange, glowing symbols. The team moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the vast, empty corridors. At the heart of the structure, they found a chamber. It was massive, its walls covered in intricate carvings that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on it rested a small black sphere. Elias approached it slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. The sphere seemed to pulse with a faint inner light, and he could feel a strange energy emanating from it. "What is it?" Kara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elias didn't answer. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the surface of the sphere. In that instant, his mind was flooded with images, visions of fire and destruction, of civilizations rising and falling, of something vast and incomprehensible lurking in the shadows of the universe. He stumbled back, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Kara caught him, her eyes wide with concern. "Captain, are you okay?" Elias nodded, though he wasn't sure it was true. He turned to the team, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "We're leaving," he said. "Now." Back on the Vanguard, Elias sat alone in his quarters, staring out at the stars. The sphere was locked away in the ship's secure containment unit, but he could still feel its presence, like a weight pressing down on his soul. He didn't know what the catalyst was, or why every dead civilization in the galaxy seemed to fear Earth. But he knew one thing for certain. They weren't guarding it. They were hiding it. And now, it was awake.